And the other thing is often the face work, much as with films, you put the film in the can 12 months ago, and then you reach the release and you have to go and do the publicity tour. But it's removed in time, and the after kind of the lead up to release, 6 weeks before you go to press and it hits shelves, is a great time to be doing all that work. That's generally when most people start to focus their PR efforts. But we're also seeing a lot of work to get those faces talking earlier. I know in our case we're really lucky because Josh and Andrew, who are the president and I think Andrew's the chief creative officer, handle a lot of the early PR, because that's a lot of what their job used to do, is to go out and hire those projects. And they do it at every level. They'll hire it to publishers, they'll hire it to the press, and then we start to get into more detailed stuff. There's a lot of Cam, who's the creative director on Mercenaries 2, does a lot of the web updates these days, a lot of face work. So it's really a balance, but I think it's definitely happening.
What are some key experiences or things you saw or heard or went through that kind of acted as a catalyst for developing this philosophy?
That's a really good question, and for me, the light bulb moment on it was when Steve Jackson from Steve Jackson Games was in a video game design roundtable at one of the GDCs a couple of years ago, and he said somebody suggested a rule, and he's like, you could run people using that rule. And it's kind of funny to hear coming from Steve Jackson, because Steve's the classic geek, Coke bottle glasses and sitting in the corner, but he's also a bit of an evil mastermind. And yes, you could run people like that. And that's what's really kicked off my thinking and set me along that line. The other thing is that when I became a lead, which was about 3 years ago, I spent a lot of time talking with other leads, because I'd had some great leads in my past, and I'd had some less than great leads in my past, and I realised that even the greatest leads in our industry at the moment, in my opinion, in design especially, with a long way to go. A long way to go, a lot to learn, a lot to invent. Every day as a designer, working on the cutting edge, you're working with something new. Hopefully working with something that nobody's seen yet. And ways to deal with that were really few and far between. So I spent a lot of time talking to people and a lot of time compiling how they approached things. People who ship great games, people who I'd spoken to in the past, people who I'd worked with in the past who I thought did a great job. And two things really stood out for me. And the first was a really simple one when you think about it, which is that as the lead designer, if your game doesn't play well, it's your fault. And that's really empowering and bloody terrifying, because you tend to have hundreds of reasons why things didn't quite work out the way you wanted. It's always the way, like, oh well, we had to crunch at the end and we didn't have time for that feature and we had to choose between these things, and the guy doing that level wasn't doing such a good job, but I didn't want to be hard on him, and all of those things go away in the cold light of if the game doesn't play great, it's my fault. And that was great, because that cleared the decks for me to start working on every day, making sure that the game was great. And then I realised I couldn't just do that on myself. The second was that a lead designer's job is to make sure that every designer who works with him is in a better place than you were at the same time. So at every point where I'm working with somebody, I'm looking back in my own career and thinking, how could I make things better for them where they are now compared to where I was when I was there? And this may backfire, because it may mean that a whole bunch of people end up really smart and I end up poor and penniless in a gutter, because they're all much better than me now. But that's a pretty good way to go, I reckon. So that's kind of the framework that caused me to start looking at things differently. Yeah.
You talk about obviously games getting bigger and having more scope and everything like that. We also talk about design, like that's where lead designers these days, where they go along the most natural design process. Do you think that one of the things that they have to build on now that the tools are there with the technology and everything is more of a storytelling and narrative design standpoint and everything like that, and the writing of you coming into this next gen where the storytelling is becoming more imminent? And do you think there's more room, or there's going to be room created in the industry for more designers coming from writing backgrounds as opposed to programmers or artists and things like that?
Yeah, I think that's been happening for a while. I think we're starting to get some really great collaborations with writers who understand games better than in the past. There's some top-rate contractors out there who are writing great stuff, who have consistently been working in the games industry but have also got experience elsewhere. We're starting to see the fruits of, the best game story you've ever seen tends to look pretty crap next to an average Hollywood film. There's no doubt when it comes, especially when it comes to these authored experiences, that we're a long way to go. Flip side, when it comes to building spaces in which experiences happen, that's where the story you end up with is often not the story you set out to tell. And you see this happen a lot with people reporting play sessions of GTA, play sessions of Sims, play sessions of these more open-worldy games. And I actually think that there's a bit of space there for people to sneak in from a psychology background perspective. Because ultimately a huge amount of what we do is just making images and sounds on the screen that make something happen in the person. And that's where any medium becomes art, is when you can move and change a person. And I think we have the opportunity to do that in a way that no other media does. That's really exciting. The question is, did we change them in the way we set out to? And there's a maybe, maybe not end there, but I think that happens with art too. People are touched by great art in different ways. It's okay. So yeah, I think it's exciting times. I think when it comes to really authored experiences, like really structured, Gears of War, God of War, Cheese of War, Salad of War, any of the old war games, when it comes to these really structured and authored experiences, they're great. And they've got a long way yet to run. We have not seen the end of these by a long shot. And I'm sure we're going to see some mind-blowing storytelling happening there. But to a large extent, that's not what excites me though. It's not what I see coming around the corner that I know is going to blow my socks off. So, yeah.
Where do you see sound and audio, in the design? Where do you start putting the sound and music and all of that? Do you start at the start or the middle, or where do you see it?
Yeah, look, the best answer I can give you to that is as soon as possible. And to me, what I love about working in games, I do a bit of writing fiction myself. I paint, I sculpt, I do these things outside of work that are solo creative expressions of what I want to express. And I enjoy those, and those are great. But what gets me up in the morning and excited about doing what we do now is collaboration with brilliant people. Brilliant artists, brilliant animators, brilliant programmers, brilliant audio guys. And we've been in 6 months of prototype so far without an audio guy. We've had some access to the audio assets on the other team, and our audio guy's just about to start, and I'm super excited because we've got our prototype to a place where it's really cool, and I'm delighted that we've got a fresh set of eyes and ears coming in to start talking about how we can really take it over the top. Because audio does so much. You only have to look at a scored film to see a film without sound and a film with full score to see how much sound can do right at the beginning. And we're fortunate enough to have just a fantastic sound team on the other team, and that's our full production team. And man,